All right, we're going to jump into our next call here. So we did put a poll question out today, and it's one I don't think I gave Chris any time ahead of time to look into this story, but we polled the audience about whether they believe the Loch Ness monster was real, and that is coming off of an article that there was, and I'm going to get the name of the dinosaur wrong, but there was a type of sea living dinosaur that was found in freshwater, or the fossils were found in it anyway. So it gave some plausibility to the Loch Ness monster being real, apparently. So
I'm into
it. I would like to talk to Phil from Texas, who is responding to our poll question. Hi, Phil.
Hey, Phil.
Hi, Erin.
Hi.
Hi, Chris. I'm so happy to see young people breaking the mold. You guys are just the best.
Yay!
I got into skepticism a long time ago, and it still astonishes me what people are willing to believe. They'll believe any story as long as it's shouted out with confidence and surety. They'll fucking believe anything. You name it, they'll believe it. But one of the points I wanted to make was that it is possible to do the best skeptical work and still be wrong. Because we have been told things all our life that as skeptics we were convinced were right that are not right. Can I give you a brief example?
Yeah, sure. Definitely.
Okay. I'm a sci-fi movie buff. I'm an old guy, so I grew up on 50s reruns on TV and Outer Limits and Twilight Zone and all those great shows.
Outer Limits.
For decades, we were told. Now, this is a silly example, but follow me here. This is a silly example, but for decades we were told that there were two different endings to King Kong versus Godzilla. There was a Japanese ending and an American ending, one in which Godzilla won, the other one in which King Kong won. You don't even know that, right?
No, I'm vaguely familiar with what you're talking about. Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so 1963, Godzilla versus King Kong. It turns out somebody just said that. It wasn't true at all. There's not two different endings. And for decades, all of us sci-fi fans believed that. So it's possible to do the hard work and still get it all wrong.
I guess my question about that, Phil, really quick, Phil, I guess my question before you say your next thing is, were you doing the hard work actually? Were you actually like, is it true that this was filmed two different ways? And how can I find that out? And am I going to write a letter to the person? And, just because you're skeptically looking at other things in your life doesn't mean you are at other, like the Godzilla. Yeah, what was the other monster? Oh, King Kong.
King Kong.
Yeah, the Godzilla King Kong movie. So were you actually taking the time to be like, is this true? And can I find the other thing? Or was it just like a popular belief, so it was just okay to believe it?
Both of the above. Both of the above. Because nobody challenged that claim for decades. So we all kind of went like, well, somebody said it, so it must be true.
Yeah.
Okay, so it sounds like then until the decades passed, nobody was actually like, in your words, doing the hard work that goes into like being a skeptic.
There was a misstep somewhere along the line that the people further down didn't catch. I think that's a really good point that you're making, both of you, is that we could come to this area, or we could come to this framework where we're like, okay, we're skeptics and like we try to have good methodology, but how often are we like getting lazy with it? I guess maybe is the right way to look at it, or like just
you remember?
I trust a certain people. I trust a certain like person, so I'm going to follow them. But then you're forgetting that maybe to like go back and actually do the source checking and things like that too. I have caught myself doing that, especially this last like couple of years when there's been so much out there. You kind of get those, that's what influencers are. They're people who condense information and they put it out to you. And then once you kind of trust an influencer, you can kind of just trust that they did the source checking. But sometimes it's important to like really go back and do it, especially on, maybe the King Kong thing is not like a life-changing thing. I wouldn't necessarily say that you did anything wrong there by missing that. But like when it comes to bigger things, like to actually like go back and realize that like even somebody that you really trust might not have it right. So always going back and keeping yourself and other people in the skeptic community accountable for doing the hard work.
Yeah.
Exactly. Do both of you remember subliminal cuts in films? Do you know what that's about?
Yes. Oh,
yes.
Okay. There's no such goddamn thing as subliminal cuts. That was never done. And eventually, the guy, and this got a congressional hearing. You know, they outlawed subliminal cuts, even though there were no such thing. And eventually, the guy who promoted that theory admitted that he made it up. You remember in The Exorcist, supposedly there were subliminal cuts showing quick cuts of popcorn and cold drinks and so on, and that made the concessions go up. That never happened. That didn't happen. But yet, there are still millions of people who believe that subliminal cuts are a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is true that subliminal cuts are real, but I think, well, correct me if I'm wrong, but like, I think where that comes from is like art house films and like porn, like, you know, like really weird, like porn and art house things that people would go and see. And it was like really interesting, like artistic ways of messing with film. So it's like when they were like, okay, we're going to cut this little piece of film here and tape it in so that this flashes and that's going to be really artistic. But I think maybe the case you're talking about, was it about like popular films? Like,
yeah, I think the idea is that like maybe if it was happening in an artistic side, you know, side thing, is that somebody took that idea and they use it to apply to like larger media. And I mean, we're just kind of, we're drawing back to like the whole like satanic panic, honestly, where it was just like any excuse to kind of like make everybody really paranoid about everything. And sometimes there is like a hint of, you know, I mean, what do they say? Like the best conspiracies have a hint of truth in them. So, and yeah, just like kind of missing the step there of like seeing like where to start from.
All right. Hold on. Here's one more. For 100 years, we were told that spinach had 10 times the iron that it actually contains.
Right.
And it turns out, and for years, people said that was a misplaced decimal point. And it turns out later, no, it wasn't a misplaced decimal point. It was a corrupted experiment. So it's possible to do the best work you can do and still be wrong.
Right.
Yeah, definitely.
So, I mean, maybe another message here is that, like, even if you're a skeptic, is that you need to always remain humble and that things may change.
Yeah, I think, Phil, my understanding of what you're saying is like, even if you have the skeptic label, like you can still get it wrong. So we need to continue being skeptical, and we need to continue being, skeptical. I don't know if there's another word. We need to continue the practice. Just because you've gone through it once with something doesn't mean that thing can't be skepticized again, or that you should stop doing it for other things. That's kind of what I'm getting from what you're saying, Phil.
Remain in that epistemic humility, right? That you may still have it wrong, and people that you respect may have it wrong still. So just like, just remain open in that way. And I mean, we try to say on like all these shows, like we're open to being convinced. And if somebody calls in, talks to us, and wants to like talk to us about God, like I have never said there's nothing that will ever convince me, because I'm trying to remain, you know, epistemically humble, that I don't know everything. I'm not omniscient. So there may be something out there that like will change my mind, and there may be views that I hold right now, or like things that I would consider knowledge right now that I could be wrong about. So but that's just different frameworks we work in.
The magic of science is we're always able to change our minds when we get more information. Do you remember this has been going on for 60 years, that if you train a planaria, a flatworm, to move toward food when you shine a certain light, and you chop that planaria up and you feed it to another planaria, that worm will absorb the knowledge from the first worm. Remember that experiment?
I've never heard of that one. I'm sorry, but that sounds super trippy.
Worm knowledge experiment. Whoa.
Worm knowledge.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm guessing it had something to do with like mazes, right? Like it could still go through like the same route or something.
And there are conflicting results on that particular experiment. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So all I'm saying is we always need to keep an open mind, but not believe every goddamn thing that some crackpot, produces a video about.
That's
especially when it comes to worms.
Yeah.
Those goddamn worms.
Yeah. So to relate it to like the Loch Ness monster thing, I like this. It's an interesting headline. It's a little clickbaity. It's maybe like, but to people who are kind of in that realm of kind of like cryptids and these woo-woo things, like that's going to be a lot of like juice for somebody to like run with it, right? It took me
once
less than 30 seconds to go and look at the deeper research in it and realize that like the fossil is still like 100 million years old. So it's like if you're talking about modern day sightings, like it still sounds pretty implausible to me. So for me, I could anyway, it's just I'm picking up what you're putting down, Phil, and I appreciate the reminder.
Yeah.
Well, once somebody sees a Mothman or a Cougar Man or a this or that man, suddenly we have hundreds of reports, because once the story breaks, everybody starts seeing it.
Yeah. Carl Sagan talks a lot about that in his book, A Demon Haunted World. So,
a must read for everybody.
I love that book.
Yeah,
that book gave me a lot of clarity on a lot of things, especially coming from like this, like the charismatic kind of movements. Like, it just was like, it broke it down quite simply, on how we can kind of take these. He's got so many simple ways of looking at these things so that you can quickly, assess these claims that people are making, and also just like. It kind of sparked my interest into learning a little bit more about psychology and like how these things, like I'm no expert, I just read for fun, but understanding a little bit more on like what happens in, how people come to these beliefs and how it works, in conditioning and social contagion and all these other things. Like it's also very interesting, right?
500 years ago, everybody you would stop on the street would insist that they had seen a witch having sex with the devil or poisoning a well. It was common knowledge. Everybody knew it. And we now know it was completely wrong. And tens of thousands of people were tortured to death, died horrible deaths. But it was common knowledge that these things happened all the time.
Yes.
So same thing with alien abductions, I think, and you name it. You name a crazy belief, and it's probably bullshit.
Yeah, definitely.
Probably. Yeah. Good reminder. Thanks for calling in, Phil. I think you brought up some great points. Yeah. Have a great rest of your night.